Thanks for joining us on the 20 and 20 podcast. Today's episode is our interview with former NBA All-Star and 18-year veteran of the NBA, Chicago's own Terry Cummings.
Okay, well, we're pleased to welcome our next guest, Mr. Terry Cummings. Thanks for joining us, Terry.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're really glad to have you. And Terry, I thought about you because all the good things that you do for not only the community where you live, but the community all over, the country. So it was really good talking to you the other day, and I'm very proud of you as an individual. And as an ex-NBA player, we need more people like you, as I told you that the other day. So it was just very nice coming on. Now, the first thing I was going to ask, I was talking about, it shows you how I get a brain sometimes.
How long you played?
He played for 18 years. I was looking at that. I mean, very few people in the history of NBA has played for 18 years.
Yeah.
My wheels ran off after 10 years.
But you came right out of the box, rookie of the year, and just had a big jump and set a bunch of records that put you in a class, especially then, there's very few people.
Yeah, I was real fortunate to say the least. Kermit, actually, when I retired in 2000, I was one of only 8 players in the history of the game that had played 18 years or more. And since then, it's probably been a few more guys added to the list, but I was one of 8 at the time.
That's tremendous because he's so strong, though. I think that helped a great deal. But your mindset, though, too, you were always a serious player. You didn't come out there to, handshake and hug and kiss and everything else like that.
That was always after the game. I grew up with your crew.
Yeah.
Your crew guys taught me really well. The old heads taught me how to go out and be a professional, and the guys that were my friends, we were friends off the court. It's not like today where these guys are all hugged up on each other and stuff. When we got on the court to do business. When the game was over, we would hang out and do whatever we would do.
Well, tell me about your college career before we go into your professional career, because that was a great DePaul team that you had.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about my college career is I look back at it and I started to think, I said, why does it always seem like I'm like right on the precipice of something, but not quite there? And it was because I was such a late bloomer. I played 2 years of high school ball. And then I never was an All-American until I got to college. But I left Carver High School in Chicago, and I had to go and recruit myself to DePaul. And all the major schools, as a late bloomer or what they call a blue chipper, I was getting letters from all the major colleges in the country, but I had not heard from DePaul. So I called them up and asked them why they weren't recruiting me. And they said, well, we've been trying to get to you, but your coach won't let us in. And so I asked them for the address. I went down, saw the university, sat down with Coach Ray Meyer, and wound up signing a letter of intent to go to DePaul. And I think
well, why did you think your head coach was he being paid by some other teams, not to let by college teams? Why wouldn't he let DePaul?
He didn't. He did. He had grown-ups. I mean, I was a kid, but grown-ups have conversations and know things that we don't know. And like he never really expressed to me why. Coach Howard never expressed to me why he did it. But I felt real unction to stay home in Chicago. I had gone and visited Iowa with Lute Olson, and was actually on my way to UNLV with Tarp when I decided, what, I'm just going to stay home. And DePaul turned out to be one of the greater blessings in my life because I had the experience of spending so much time with Coach Ray Meyer. I would be in there before practice, after practice, in his office, sitting down, just, gleaning from him. And we talk about everything from politics to religion to economics. But it was for me. You said I was always serious. I grew up in a family of 7 boys, 6 girls, and
Mm.
everything was serious. Everything was like we weren't well off, we weren't middle class, we weren't even poor, we were poor. And that you fight for everything. So it was like a tooth and nails thing, and I'd always been a real strong mindset kind of person, but when it came to b-ball, I had to learn how to reconstruct that my auntie and them called me mule when I was little because they said I was real stubborn, but I had to funnel it differently so I could use it in playing ball.
Well, tell me this: who was on that DePaul team with you?
Mark Aguirre, Clyde Bradshaw, Skip Diller, Bernard Randolph, Mitchum, Jim Mitchum was on that team. Dennis McGuire, Peaches. We had who else am I missing here? On the years I was there, man, I got to think about this. But that was the nucleus of the team right there. Those guys.
But you guys had a wonderful record too. I'm telling you, what was your record?
I only lost 5 games in the 3 years I was there. So
that's great. Wow.
Yeah, I lost 5 games the first week I was with the Clippers.
Man, I was
so disappointed.
But you know what though, I tell you, I was on the Clippers, but they sent me up to Portland because of Walton wanted to come down. Was Walton on the team there?
He was.
Was he healthy?
No, but he was. When I got there, he was still picking and choosing when he was going to play. But Swin was there, Swinada.
Yeah, Swin was there.
I got to play with Swin. And I had wished, man, as a younger player, because I always studied up. I knew the guys, the older guys, probably better than the newer guys. But boy, if I had gotten to play with some of you all when you all were in mid drift, ready for it, it would have been a whole different game in Clipperville.
Well, we won. See, people don't realize when they brought that franchise from Buffalo and switched with the Celtics, we were just a hodgepodge of guys, but we won. Not big. We were 43-39, but we had Randy Smith and Freeman Williams and Brian Taylor. We had World B. Free was averaging about 30 a game, and Randy Smith about 25 a game, and we had Freeman Williams that could score 25 to 11 shoot as much as he wanted to shoot.
Absolutely.
And Brian Taylor. Yeah, you played with them, right?
Yeah, and Randy was there when I got there. I played with Randy too. My point guard, my first year was Lionel Hollins, L-Train. And then my second year, Norm Nixon was the point guard.
Yeah. And Norm was a good guy. I played with him with the Lakers. And they never should have sent him away. Even though he was a point guard, he could have played the 2. I mean, he was another serious young man. He came to play and played good defense and worked very hard. But it's a sad thing what happened in San Diego. That could have been a wonderful franchise.
Absolutely. I thought that the whole thing is they had players that came through there that could play. I mean, even after yourself and even after me, I've watched the franchise. It just doesn't do well with the successes or the players that they draft, and they've had some good coaches and haven't done well by or with the coaches as well.
I'm telling you. So tell me, how many years were you in San Diego?
I played in San Diego 2 years. The third year, they moved to L.A., and that's when I had gone into the office and talked to Sterling, and he said, well, how can I help you? I said, I need you to trade me. He said, well, we can't trade you. You're our franchise player. I said, well, I don't want to raise my kids in L.A., and I'm not an L.A. person. And he said, well, we can't trade you. I said, well, when you get ready to trade me to Milwaukee. I had a dream I was playing for him. And I went in there armed with that in my mind. And I think the first day of training camp, I got a call maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. I had been traded to Milwaukee.
Did you see yourself as like a perfect fit for that situation?
Not really till I got there, because for the first time in my pro career, I had a coach who told me what he wanted from me. You know, and in San Diego, I mean, I pretty much was an athlete doing what I did naturally. When I got to Milwaukee, Coach Don Nelson taught me the game. You
That's
know,
good.
learned the game in Milwaukee.
Who was your coach in San Diego? Gene Chu?
Paul Silas my rookie year, and then
Okay.
Jim Lynam my second year.
Okay. So Milwaukee is closer to where you come from. So were you comfortable there?
Yeah.
Who were the other players there?
2 hours away from home until I was tired of driving up back and forth.
Oh,
Yeah, you do that enough. Them 2 hours, like 4 or 5 hours, because you know every little bump in the road, you know every sign along the road where you know where you are, so much so you out thinking yourself while you drive. So started staying home.
What was the adjustment like going to like a losing situation to a veteran late in one of the better teams?
It was, it's like a weight off of my shoulders because I was used to winning from college, and the Clipper organization at the time didn't really have the mentality, and a lot of the older guys, that Greg Kelser was on that team too.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot of those guys had pretty much, they were there collecting checks. It wasn't even. I imagine they were at the end of their careers, and it didn't really matter as much. And even with that, we almost made the playoffs. I think my first or second year, if not both of them, we were probably just a few games away. We could have got, that last spot, but it just wasn't something that cats pushed for.
Well, who was the center there in Milwaukee when you were there at first?
Dauber had already retired. The year he retired, that year, Bob Lanier, the year I came in. So it was Paul McKeskey, Randy Brewer.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, well, I came there as a small forward from the Clippers and wound up being the guy in Nelly's system that played 3, 4, and 5. And because I was strong enough to handle the centers, quick enough to play with the small forward, and, smart enough to do the 3, 4, and 5, learn those positions, it made me, real flexible for Nelly in game situations.
So in those years, when you played against certain players, who were the ones that gave you trouble, or if any of them did give you any trouble, Terry?
I think the guy that was the toughest for me, who defended me the best, was like a Kevin McHale.
Okay.
For Boston, he was long, and then it wasn't just him. It was that they had 2 7-footers. So you beat one, the other one sitting back there waiting for you.
Robert Paris?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I fought him, and then I had a lot of run-ins with the Malones and the Barkleys at my position, but I pretty much, just speaking true, I never had trouble scoring on people, but I think that Kevin, he defended me really well.
I'm looking at the different people that made the Hall of Fame. I was telling somebody the other day, just like you and Marcus Johnson, you guys belong in the Hall of Fame, because if you look at the people that have made it, your stats add up, stack up with theirs. Yeah. And with your attitude, the way you played so aggressively. So you were a good defensive player. Like a lot of the guys that are in the Hall of Fame weren't good defensive players, but you came and you played hard defense, and you were very good offensively. So what do you average, about 17 points a game for your career? And that's toward.
Yeah. And that's with the last 7 years. I never averaged more than 10 points a game because I was a role player. But I'll tell you one thing, I had more fun as a role player than I did as a starter. I mean, I had a different perspective for the game. I got to be more complete and whole as a player. The owners would call me, the GMs would call me, the coaches would call me, and we'd sit down and meet as a liaison between the players in those high echelon leadership positions. And that's what really made me feel real special. And you said, I played 18 years. I was being traded for at 34 and 35 because the coaching staff and the administration didn't know how to deal with players. They needed a liaison between them and the players, and so I kept getting traded. I left San Antonio, went to Milwaukee, left Milwaukee, and went to Seattle. Went to Philadelphia, and then went from Philadelphia to Seattle. From Seattle, I got traded to New York. From New York, I got traded to Golden State. And each time I got traded is because of leadership more than it was talent. And the fortunate thing is I always kept my body up, so I was always in shape. I could run, I could still play, and I could still carry a team if I needed to for a few games.
Well, another thing, when you come off the bench, though, later on, you don't have to worry about foul trouble as much, too, so you can be more aggressive. Is that true?
Yeah, I didn't worry about it anyway. You already know.
Yeah.
In those last 7 to 8 years, I used to be in the higher echelon of cats with fouls for the year. And I remember one guy said to me, T, you foul a lot. Why you have so many fouls? And I told him, I said, well, you should look at it like this. When the game ends, I can't take them home with me. I might as well.
Well, when you look at a lot of teams out there, you'll see a lot of young talent, but they don't have those vets for that guidance. So I can imagine, from the ownership standpoint, when they're looking at making their team more complete, they need a guy. Not only is he an older, experienced guy, but he's capable, like you were.
Yeah, and someone who's not doing the very things the young guys are doing. The young guys need someone to look up to, and a lot of them are inner city kids, so they're not going to just take to just anybody. And it's not a black or white thing. It's probably just more cultural than it is anything. And I've been fortunate because I've always been transparent. I was the guy that was quiet, but I would always say and do what needed to be said and done, and I would say and do it the way it needed to be said. I wouldn't hold back. Coaches I played for, things went down in the locker room, I would be the one to stand up and say and do. And the coaches wouldn't come behind me. They wouldn't even come out the office. Sometimes they let me handle the locker room.
Well, so you have that leadership role in that, and that's why you get into, when you started your ministry, I was reading, you were still playing ball.
Yeah, I've been in ministry since I was like 16, 17 years old.
Oh, wow. So what pushed you in that?
Huh?
What got you going to that at such a young age?
I grew up in a family where we were always God aware, and it wasn't something I necessarily signed up to do, to be honest. But I don't think ministry, real true ministry, is that thing anyway. I think it is an unction you get from within that is inspired by God. And you have to know it when you get to it. And fortunately for me, I was raised around it. So I understood something was going on, and I knew it was different because, when I came into the league, it wasn't the going thing that people were believers or Christians. The league back then, when I first came into the league, we had a game, the second or third game was in Indianapolis. And when we got there, I don't know if you remember this, when we got there, the bus pulled up and there were prostitutes lined up at the front door.
Where was it?
To get there.
Indianapolis.
Oh, Indianapolis. Oh, wow.
Yeah. They had a whole group of prostitutes sitting out there waiting on the guys. It was a different league then too, because back then they, Bill Walton broke me in. Them jokers drank. They had liquor in the locker room back then, and Bill used to take the whole tub with him.
Yeah, the beer. Yes. It has a different world. We were talking to Marcus before. There weren't that many nice places to play. San Diego was not. Detroit wasn't nice. Milwaukee wasn't really nice at that time. Detroit wasn't nice. Washington, we played at Cole Fieldhouse, which is Maryland University. Buffalo was horrendous. Cleveland was horrendous. But now all of a sudden, these guys play in such wonderful places.
Well, it's the amenities came with the expansion. Now, back then, one of the best places to play was the Forum. And also, I enjoyed playing out in Phoenix. I thought they had a really good setup, too.
I tell you, I don't know about Phoenix. It was just, I don't know about this. I tell you, And some of those places were so bad. Like in Detroit, we played in Detroit and in Cleveland, you couldn't take a shower because it's like a cesspool in the shower. It was like green foam. I said, look,
Yeah.
we stayed at horrendous places or hotels. Oh man, I'm telling you.
Clippers were notorious for that. I don't know about Portland, but man, them jokers playing with them, we had to wash and clean our own uniforms.
Oh yes.
They would give us the little thing of woolite at the end of the game. You had to go and soak it and scrub your uni and then hang that joke up because you might have a game the next day and you were responsible. Back then, you had to carry all your stuff. These guys don't carry nothing.
I know.
But the Clippers, because I came from where I came from, I wasn't tripping. But we were catching cabs to games. Because they wouldn't go get a bus, and it just was so many trifling things playing with them back then that it made it really difficult at times because people looked at us like we were, the scum of the league on many levels,
So when you left, your favorite team that you played for was what now?
Man, it was just kind of different. I love playing in Milwaukee. I love playing in San Antonio. I didn't want to be traded.
Why did they trade you from San Antonio?
Well, they said because they needed players because some players went down. But we had a Sports Illustrated had did an article on us and said we were the smartest team in the league. And that following year, Nelly left and I think went to Dallas, and Coach Dale Harris took over. And Dale got in the newspaper and said that we are the dumbest team he's ever coached. And the reporter asked me, he said, well, what do you think about that? I said, well, we the same team as we were last year. Only one thing's changed. So if we went from the smartest to the dumbest and we bumped heads the whole year. He called my name. He was, it's just like went out his way. And I knew a part of it was because he knew I could take it. But he called me on one day I had enough. We were playing Detroit and I ran from one end of the court to the other. And I caught myself when I saw his eyes because he had dropped his arms and he was scared. And I had to, take that effort and energy and kick a chair instead of running at him because I was just through. And then we wound up losing the game. And in the locker room, he says, if Dale Harris, he's real monotone. Guys in here don't do what they're supposed to do, what they're paid to do. And I told him, I said, no. I said, I earn every penny you all give me. You all have made it that way. And he kept going and I kept going. He said, you say one more thing, I'm going to fine you the most you get fined. And I raised my hand and I said, who the so-and-so you think going to pay the fine? And so we kind of, that's when I knew things had shifted in Milwaukee. And in the end, I think that had as much to do with being traded as anything. And then people will say that, I was stubborn or outspoken. And they're true because I would fight for the other players too. I'd go into the GM's office or the coach's office and say, so-and-so is struggling and needs some help. And everybody don't need to know about it. But we need you to help him. This is you all's job. But because you all don't talk to the players, I'm going to tell you, you need some help. But it was a blessing in the end that I got to answer your question. I got to be traded to San Antonio because when I got there, Larry Brown was there. And he was the second great coach I played under as far as teaching the game and allowing me to be a man. Because Larry dealt with me like I was a man. And I was brought there to make it easier and lighter for their two top picks, which was David Robinson and Sean Elliott.
I agree. I remember that. So my question to you is I remember what you're saying, that you're one of the few people that probably scare coaches because you spoke up. Like, I give you a good example. Maurice Lucas, right?
Uh-huh.
So we're in Milwaukee, and Lionel Hollins and Maurice Lucas, we lost the game in the last second. And so Jack Ramsey's yelling. And you know how coaches do. Now, who has something to say about this? but we know we're not supposed to say anything. Just let them travel on. Well, Maurice Lucas stood up and said, "You're not calling the thing, right? You're not doing this, coach." I said, "Oh my God, sit down."
Oh yeah.
Lucas kept going. A couple days later, Lucas off to New Jersey. Calvin that. And then Lionel Hollins was gone. And Lionel Hollins was going to Philadelphia or somebody. You know, when they ask you, as you were saying,
they don't want to answer.
They don't want to answer.
They don't want to answer. If you're gonna answer them old heads taught me that the hard way as well. When I got to Milwaukee, Sidney Moncrief told me, he said, "TC, I don't care what that man say to you, don't you answer him."
That's exactly right. Don't answer.
I told him, I said, I can't wait. I'm gonna let him have it. And Dale Harris had a scheme on the court that he wanted the ball when we came down. If we didn't have a fast break, he wanted the ball to swing to the other side and come back. I told him, I said, y'all make a mistake and swing that ball over here to me. It ain't coming back over there.
But you know what? You played so low to the ground. I mean, by a person that watched you play and be around watching you, you played for a tall guy. You played low. Your center of gravity was so low. That's how you exploded on people. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, because you know, I had a growth spurt. I think most of us did, Kermit, but mine was from 9th grade to 10th grade. I grew from 5'8" to 6'4" over the summer, and but I was used to playing smaller guys. So when all this height came, I was playing point guard at 6'9", you know, in high school, my senior year. If, you know, our guards had problems, bring the ball up, I brought it up against another guy about my height. Or even if he was shorter, I had handles with both hands. I could shoot with both hands. And if that didn't work, I could post them up.
So tell me, whose game do you look at now that's playing that had a game similar to yours?
None of these cats. It was I cannot think of his name, but it was a young guy. He was playing with New Orleans for a while. He had the kind of game. He had the jump shot, the post up. He had some handles. I can't think of his name, but I don't see me in any of these guys that are playing now because their game is you know, like perimeter and driving, 3-point, but never the post up, because I think that's the piece that made everything else. I mean, a big guy, for instance, you know, they don't like being posted up. And, you know, I made a living doing that and shooting a turnaround. But they'll give you that leverage you need out on the floor to take a dribble to the right or a dribble to the left and shoot the jumper, because they don't want to chase you. And if you drive on them, they're going to be in foul trouble because most big guys ain't used to, you know, sliding, you know, to play against another big guy.
Do everything like you love me, and other things like a real G. I don't need nothing you do for me. It's all good, just love me. Do everything like you love me, and other things like a real G. I don't need nothing you do for me. It's all good, just love me.
Well, you know, another thing, by watching you play, you're one of the few big guys that could dribble, but what you did really well, you made your move first before dribbling. You went by the guy and put the ball down. Now you see these guys that start dribbling and try to beat the guy with the dribble, but because of your quick step, I used to always watch that. You're by the guy before, and then you put the ball down after you went by the guy.
Yeah, you know what it was is I had a quick first step anyway, especially going to my left, and I would hear coaches hollering at their players, play his left hand. So, you know, to start the game off, I would go right. 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
and the coach and the guy, you can hear them talking to each other. He said, I know, but the scouting report said left. He's going right, you know. But, you know, back then we were cerebral. We knew what a cat liked to do. You know, we knew, like, I know, like Randy Smith, as fast as he is, I would sit down and analyze even the players I played with, their games. That cat was so fast, but he was all right.
There you go. All right. You're right.
Yeah, so it's like you pay attention to Karl Malone. He came in the league. I remember a foul being called on me one day, and I went and talked to the ref, and I said, you realize, like I do, that he's going right every time, right? I said, I'm saying this to you because I just think it's how can you call a foul on me for sitting on his right hand? And I'm not moving, and he can't run me over.
What did the referee say? Just shook his
Nothing.
head?
They laugh because that's the part of the game sometimes, Kermit, that I really think is set against players who want to play by the rules, because the league has assigned certain guys. They got a whistle. They got the green light on their team, but they got the whistle, and the whistle makes a big difference. Like, I don't know that I played at any time where I had the whistle. I just worked through everything. Because
So
if I
Mike,
had gotten the whistle away, some of them guys, it would have been a whole different thing, even in the small markets I played in.
you know, a lot of people are saying guys who played back in our time couldn't compete now, and vice versa. And I told them, I said, listen, the stars in our times would be stars now. It's their mindset. And they are going to be good regardless. Now they might not have had the nutrition. Oh, now, Terry, it was funny. I go to the practices when I was working with the union. They feed them a nice breakfast. They give them a nice lunch, and they give them nice food to take home.
And per diem on the road. The per diem is unfair. That's people's house notes and car notes combined.
It's a different world, but I'm just saying the stars back when we played and before you played would be stars nowadays. And
I agree.
No question.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I tell people all the time, I said, you cannot measure it. I said, the problem is we don't play the same style, because and the fact that we played the roughest, toughest style puts us in front of them, because they still don't know what it's like to play with a hand check or a forearm.
Yes. Yeah.
Somebody bodying you up from half court till you get to your place on the court, on the half court, and then all up in your mug. There were guys that played the Norm Van Leers and Ricky Sobers and them dudes who could hand check a guy out of his game. You know, and these cats don't get touched, and they're, I think part of it is that they're not really students of the game, in the sense that they don't understand historically how this game evolved in the NBA. And if they did, they would understand that the equalizer has always been what we call laying love on them. You know that.
So you grew up in Chicago with Sloan and Van Leer.
Yeah, watched them all the time. Bob Love.
Oh, Bob Love. That was and Chuck Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but see, the thing about Sloan, and I always respected him, even when he became a coach, he was a tough player.
Yeah, he was.
He would not back down to anybody. He was getting to fight with Bob Lanier, and Bob Lanier was twice his size. And little Van Leer, he's ready to fight every second. every second. And
they were men too. You know, one of the things that was so authentic about playing when I came in '82 is I noticed that most of the big guys, none of them had their grills. I mean, they all their front teeth were knocked out, because back then, like hockey, jokers we fought for real. And in 18 years, I only think the closest I ever came to a fight was Lonnie Shelton. Everybody else, you know, you throw them fists up, they back off, you know. And me and Lonnie didn't connect with each other physically. But from that point on, I never had a problem with him, and he didn't have one with me. I learned that when you get two big guys together that could hurt somebody, they in the back of their mind, they realize that they could be hurt too. And so you can go out your way to be strong and tough, but you don't want to cross the lines, because, you know, if a fight break out, we gonna both get hurt.
Yeah, you know, Daryl Garrison. Remember Daryl? Was he refereeing when you were there, Daryl Garrison?
Oh yeah, his son came in after him.
Yeah, he used to bring me and Lucas together when we were on other teams. And me and Lonnie Shelton, he says, "Come here, I want to talk to you guys." He says, "I'm gonna let you guys play, but don't get out of hand."
Yeah,
He says, "Because it'll make me get in trouble."
yeah.
And because Lucas would always start the game off with the elbow. Like as I told somebody, I said, "Luke, if you elbow me, one of us is gonna be in a hospital."
Yeah.
Because Luke started off, he was an intimidator,
Yeah.
and if you let him get away with it, he was gonna do it.
Yeah, he would. But he was one of the tougher guys to play against too, because he had an offensive game. He could make a jumper. He had a nice little post up game. But
He was a good passer, and he took his time when he got the ball offensively.
he could back then because he had Bill Walton and them other guys around him.
Lloyd Neal and he had a lot of good guys on that team.
Yeah.
But Luke was a tough guy, and to me, at one point, he was the number one power forward in the league. And
I
think
believe that. All around power forward too, because you had some that could score and rebound, but then to me, the power forward's job is to be an enforcer, more importantly than anything else. Because like I wasn't a shot blocker, but if you saw me coming across that lane and I saw you at the same time, you knew I was going to hit you. And because you knew I was going to hit you, that was as good as blocking a shot.
I'm going to tell you a funny story about Luke. Well, I got traded from San Diego up to Portland because of the Walton wanting to come down. Well, you had Michael Thompson and you have Maurice Lucas out there already. So I said, why am I going up there? So I go up there, but Maurice is hurt and Michael Thompson broke his leg playing some kind of touch football.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, I'm the starting power forward. Now Luke is coming back, and I'm playing really well. But for me, I'm just okay with it. I was averaging about 16 points and 10 rebounds, doing really well. That's the year I made the All-Star team. But I knew I wasn't an All-Star. Luke comes back, and because he's a star, Jack Ramsey doesn't start it. He keeps me there. Luke beats up everybody in practice every single day. I mean, he elbows them and beats them up. I said, look. So before the Chicago game, it's funny you say that, Chicago. I go to Coach Jack Ramsey. He said, Jack, put Luke back in starting lineup. He said, you don't mind? I said, Coach, we won't have a team if you don't put him back there in the starting lineup. Because he was elbowing everybody in practice every day. And so he became, because Tom Owens got hurt, so they put him starting power forward. And then Tom Owens got hurt. They put Luke to center, and they put me back at the starting forward. Luke was tough.
Yeah, he was. He was. I think for my part, what I enjoyed about basketball is like if I hadn't played basketball, I would have been a great middle linebacker or a defensive end because I love the contact, and I was all right with somebody hitting me as long as they understood I was going to hit them twice as hard and twice as long. We were going to do it for the whole game because when I finally got into the league strong, I found that every young guy that was big and bulky, muscular, they would come running at me as soon as we would start preseason. And I would tell them every year the same thing, young fella. They'd hit you that one time and swell up on you like, yeah. I said, young fella, we're going to do this for 48. This ain't going to be the one and done. We're going to be doing this for a while. And by the time that game is over, I got all the respect of all the young guys because they think so much of their guys. They don't realize that, part of being strong is being smart too. Learning how to be.
Offensively too, when I look at your game and when we talk about players, different eras and so forth, you were so efficient and you had such a good post game. You could face up and score on people. Now with there being so much of it predicated on 3-point shooting, I look at somebody like you. If I was to take you and just drop you out of that era into this one, you would have all that room to work.
Yeah,
you're going 1-on-1. And guys can't come double team you because they got to stay home on the 3-point. I mean, it seems to me like you just be right in your wheelhouse.
Well, you know what it is I played for some coaches that the dynamics were such they did not like one-on-one players, but they traded for me to come to their teams. And so the irony is that now that's all they do.
Yeah.
Is they 3 players off on the weak side and they play a 2-man game, or
Yeah.
if there's a third wheel, there may be a 3-man game. But every player has the opportunity at some point in a particular possession to go one-on-one, and oftentimes nowadays watching them, it don't take long.
So Terry, let me ask you a question. Who do you think is the greatest basketball player in the history of the NBA?
Man, I don't want that.
Okay, then do this one.
Because
People ask us all the
I
time.
think that is about as unfair as trying to say the top 20 or 30 or 50 players in the league, because I don't really think you can do it. You know, I think that I've been asked so many times over the years, you know, who was the best player on whatever team you were playing against, and woo-woo. And I said, well, the guy at the end of the bench, because he could come off and do work. He ain't in the NBA by accident. We've seen guys,
Yes, that's true.
you know, literally come off the bench and make a name for themselves, and all they needed was opportunity. But I played in the 80s, the 90s, and I watched these young kids coming in the late 90s and 2000. I believe with my whole heart I played with the best players to ever play at one time in the 80s and 90s, collectively.
Well, there's more stars. You're right.
Yeah,
There's more
I mean,
stars.
true. And any of those guys, you could take them and to use your vernacular, drop them into this age, and they would have no answer for them. And the reason they wouldn't, because if you put them in our era and they had to play according to our rules, a lot of them wouldn't survive to the same extent that they do now. And then if you did the reverse and put us in theirs, they wouldn't have an answer for us, letting us play by our rules.
Yeah.
It's a different game. Very physical. You're right about that.
Physical and mid range, like that's a poison for today's
Well,
game.
you know though too. We had coaches back then. No free layups. So there was no such thing as a free layup. You're gonna foul him hard, make sure he knows. Now they'll throw a guy out the league. I mean, throw him out the game for that.
But that's because they don't study enough. Like, I knew how to hit a guy without it appearing I was hitting him on purpose. You know, if I wanted to, when I was in high school, my coach told me, he said, you're going to be the biggest guy on the court most of the time. He said, so this is what you're going to learn to do. And I took this from high school to professional basketball. He said, you're going to use up 2 fouls every game, and you can spread them out. You don't have to do them both at the same time. One is going to be popping the guard that likes to drive to the basket, put him on his butt. The second one is the biggest guy on the floor for the other team. You're going to go at him and foul him really hard, take a second foul. And normally the way it works is the guard stops driving and the big guy don't want to have nothing to do with you.
You're right. You know what I used to do? Because I always had to play the tough guy. People that were setting screens, I would purposely run through them hard as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And then, excuse me, help pick them up. They would not set a good pick.
No more. No, they don't want that.
Yeah.
But you can't act like you did it on purpose. You have to say, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, running through your work. They would move.
Yeah.
You didn't want people running into you. I wouldn't want Terry running into me.
No, we would play up in Utah, and Karl Malone them had that little baseline thing where Karl would come from the weak side to the strong side, and in the middle of him getting to the strong side, their 3-man would come over and set a pick on me. So I was playing for a team that didn't know how to play it. So what I did was I positioned myself in the middle where the 3-man would set the pick. And when I would feel him coming over, I'd go straight through him. And I went 2 or 3 times. I guess the coach got on him real hard that he started woofing to me, talking about, you do it one more time, I'm gonna woo, 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 woo. And I told him, I turned around and looked at him. I said, you too light in the butt to be talking about. I went up to his bench. I told him, y'all better come get him. He about to get some of these.
Oh, but you know what? You talk about Karl Malone. I have to give him respect. You know, I looked at his stats. What did he miss? 5 games in like 15 years or something like that. and him and Stockton. I mean, Stockton missed a couple of games. See, nowadays they let guys have a rest day. What do you think of
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Well, that's what you get for being what they call better than everybody else. But I don't think that. I think there are parts of the game that are absent in this generation, and they won't get them until these guys who are the superstars get older and start learning how not to depend on athletic ability, but learn how to play the game up here in the cerebral area, because it changes everything. I mean, think about it: Karl Malone, Patrick Ewing. You can go on down the line, all these big guys that were offensive players who they couldn't do nothing but post up. They all had jump shots before they left the game.
That's
And
true.
that was about meticulously the game changing how, they could play, because if they were going to be effective, and they had to get something off before the double teams came. So they got jump shots.
That's true. That's true. I tell you, Terry. Before we let you go, please tell us about your ministry because that's something that you were telling me the other day that I think more people need to know about that. So I'm very impressed with it. Tell us about your ministry and how you feed these people and all the different things that you do for the
Well,
community.
I've been pastoring this group for about 15 years, and so some 8 to 10 years ago, we started a food outreach, and we drive about an hour away to Peachtree City, Georgia, to pick the food up from Midwest Food Bank, and then we drive it into Stone Mountain, Georgia. We have to unload it, and then we have to repack it. And then, by the time we get there, there's normally a stream of cars already waiting for us. But I think one of the greatest joys I've ever had is serving. And I'm not saying it because I want to assume some role of humility or false humility. It's just like one of the greater joys when you met a need. The people are struggling today. A lot of them are in all kind of troubles financially, and some don't even. I mean, every month we do this. Like tomorrow, we'll feed during the outreach. But every month there's at least a few families that come and said we were just driving by. We didn't know what we were going to do for dinner. We don't have nothing in the cupboards. We don't have any money, and we load those people up because I believe that part of my assignment is serving people who are not as well off. And the people that work with me, that serve with me, my girl Darlene, and I mean all of that. I mean, they love doing this too. It's work. It's not for the squeamish. This is a lot of work.
You know what? I'm proud of you. I have a question for you. Well, I hate to say this, when I was in solitary confinement, I had never read the Bible Terry, before. So they put us in solitary confinement, and I was in there for 40 days. No
Wow.
newspapers, no radios, no televisions, no nothing. So all I did was exercise and then go to sleep. Okay, now the preacher came by, minister came by. He kept saying, "You want a Bible?" I said, "No, I don't want no Bible." By about the 20th day, I said, "Okay, give me that Bible." But I read that Bible like 3 times because you have to do something with your mind. But I'm gonna give you a question. Matthew 6 or Matthew 7 said, "Always do things quietly." That's what Don't when you pray, don't be out there with everybody seeing you pray.
Right.
Pray quietly. When you give, don't be out there telling everybody what you're giving out.
Right.
Okay, but here's my question. I watch Facebook and stuff like that now where you have people giving. And I think it's not bad to let people know what you're doing because it helps motivate them to think, I could do the same thing or I would like to do the same thing. What do you think about that? Because since you're a minister.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I work really diligently not to oversell service, when it comes to God and his kingdom. And so the reason we do it and we show it on Facebook is because I believe that there's a part of God that is so great that is missing in today's version or conversation of things because people don't believe him to be real. But the fact that we do the work we do shows that he's real because we couldn't do it without him, there are people like myself that just really have that blind kind of faith that, whatever I'm going through, God's going to make a way, and I have to trust that. That's called hope more than faith. because you got to believe that there's something better for you, or you don't want to live. You know,
You know, the funny thing, it's nice that you say that, because when I started working over in Africa, okay, I went over there during Rwanda, during the genocide, where a million people were killed. I started working. Then I knew people needed help. So I would take a couple of my friends were doctors and a couple of friends were nurses. We went over there. But by 25 years later, we had built a clinic. We had started schools. We were feeding about 40,000 people a year. But if you had told me that at the beginning of going over there, I'd say, you got to get out your mind. I can't do that. But as time grows and time goes by, you start believing you can accomplish even a little bit more than you ever thought you could accomplish. And that's why I'm saying I think it's good, because you read the Bible says be quiet about it. I think that's good in those days before television and radio and all everything else like that. Because when people hear and see what you're doing, well, Terry, they want to help you.
Absolutely.
They want to become part of what you do.
And it's probably also the intention of it. Why are you showing it? He's showing it because it's like, hey, this is to be done. This is important. Where some people want credit, and I think that's probably what it speaks to is don't do it because you want shine.
Right. Well, there've been times where I did not put visuals up of the service of labor for other people, because I feel some kind of way. I think that everybody should have their moments where their pride they retain. And I think sometimes by putting that camera on people, it takes away some of the respect they have for themselves. And so when we're doing the food outreach, more often than not, I won't show anybody but myself and the people that work with me. So that, we can be cognizant of the fact that, this struggle is one that I went through as a child too. We didn't have food, but we would go to the local church, Catholic church, and they would have all these foods. They would have them. We would take a little wagon down there with us, and they give us boxes of cereal, milk, all, eggs and different things like that. And I remember those things being done for us because we didn't have a whole lot of anything. But, our basic needs were the most important things. And I think that that's what we work really hard to do in our food outreach.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you, because we're not going to talk about basketball. When somebody says the word faith to you, what does that mean to you, faith? When they say that to you, how do you define that word?
Well, it depends on how it's used when I'm asked. Because when I think of faith, I think of not just faith, but I think of faithfulness, the fullness of faith, and to me, what that is constancy. That is you being who you say you are, saying what you say you believe, and it showing up every time you show up. To me, that is what real faith is. It is not what you preach, it is not always what's perceived by other people, but it's what you live. Your faith is what you live, and you live it every day in spite of someone in agreement with you or disagreement. You live it because that is what you believe. Everything about my life is built on my faith in a God who I believe is not dead, but still alive, and speaks to me and walks with me. And I believe that with my whole heart, even to this day at 61. It was harder to believe when I was 16, but not here, because he's been with me through some major things that showed up in such a supernatural way that I could not believe him to be real.
Okay, what are your goals then? I mean, because you're doing so good now, are your goals bigger as time goes on? But you're helping the community and you're improving people's lives?
Well, I aspire, part of the vision that I have before I leave this earth, I will accomplish, is I want to do affordable housing. And affordable housing is a part of the whole structure of the vision, where we build schools and track fields, football fields, baseball fields for the kids to be able to have the advantage of what we did, going somewhere to practice, in a facility or in the outdoors. But the affordable housing is for seniors and for single families. And the whole concept of affordable housing is to build houses and sell them based on the income of individuals rather than on the going price of land in an area. And I know that there are repercussions for doing it because it affects the cash flow of some people, but I believe it's what we need to do. I believe that there's always been a part of our society that took care of everyone else. There's a saying we have often in Christendom that sometimes it behooves the few to take on the burden of the many. And that is something that we should never take casual, because it is our responsibility. That's why we've been given so much. I mean, you can only spend so much money, buy so many homes, drive so many cars, have so many women, children, kids, whatever. At some point, you have to think about the one piece of God that I think we miss often, and that's generosity.
Very good. Tell me this. I was telling people, they said, when was the happiest time of your life? And I told them, I said, it was when I was in college. I had no money. I had absolutely no money, but the joy in my heart was, it was just perfect. Then when you make money, people think getting money is going to make them happy. It's going to make them content.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't. But
Nope.
the people that don't have it never believe that because they don't have it.
Right.
But you have to have, like you're saying, you have to have a belief and have a goal. And what is your goal? Your goal is to help so many people. And I think the more that you can get that message across and people know who you are and how genuine you are, I think you get a whole lot of help. Yeah. I really do.
Yeah, I believe that in the end, everything will work out the way it's supposed to. I've learned to make adjustments based on the fact that God is sovereign and he gets to do whatever he wants to do. And in our servitude to him, we merely follow. I mean, it ain't my job to save the world. And I mean, as a pastor, one of the greatest lessons I've learned is that it's not my job to save everybody. My job is to be a person who sets the table, make sure that everything that I have been given is given to the people sitting at the table, but it is the responsibility of the individual to choose what they will eat and how they will respond to it.
That's heavy. That's heavy. That's really good. Well, Terry, I appreciate you coming on, and
No, thank you for having me.
How to put it all in